Thank you and good morning, everybody. And you're all very welcome, either here in Galway or online, as I know many of you are. And thanks for attending this very valuable session, which is very important. And indeed, the whole area of building control and building standards is very, very important. And I'm delighted to be here as the chair of the CCMA Housing, Building and Land Use Committee for the opening of this event, and thanks to the National Building Control and Market Surveillance Office for the invitation, and indeed for the work that you do on all our behalves on an ongoing basis. Obviously, you're all acutely aware of the primary purpose of the Building Control Acts and the building regulations as being to provide for the health, safety and welfare of people in and around buildings and or persons who may be affected by buildings or matters connected with buildings. And I think we're all conscious of the fact that we operate the system that we have within the resources that are available to us. And therefore, I want to acknowledge all of the good work that is undertaken by you and your colleagues, and to say thank you for this work, because it is so important. However, notwithstanding these efforts, there have been incidents of building products failures and of non-compliance with building regulations. Various reports have been commissioned, and remediation and our grant schemes have been introduced by government, including the pyrite remediation scheme, the defective concrete block scheme, and now the apartment defects remediation scheme as well. And you'll be, I suppose, no doubt aware that these situations have given rise to very significant physical, financial and emotional hardship for both families, individuals, families and indeed communities. And some of these schemes will run for many years to come. The potential cost to the Exchequer is in the several billions of euros, and the ultimate final cost in all aspects is very uncertain. So, you know, the work that's been done is very, very important in order to avoid these scenarios in the future. I just want to take a moment to say a little bit about the apartment defect scheme, or the interim scheme as we currently have it. And you'll be aware that the Minister for Housing, Local Government and Heritage, Darragh O'Brien, announced the opening of the interim remediation scheme in December last, and that's for the funding of emergency fire safety defect works in apartments and duplexes constructed between 1991 and 2013 on a nationwide basis. And the scheme provides for funding of eligible interim measures at the moment, pending the putting in place of the final scheme. And that's designed to provide an acceptable level of fire safety in buildings, pending completion of any full remedial scheme that's required. And the full remedial works will include all of the necessary fire safety measures, as well as those related to water ingress and structural damage. And then eligible works will be funded under the statutory scheme in due course. So a lot of work has been done in recent months through regular meetings between the local government sector, and in particular the fire service, the department and the housing agency who are managing the applications. And in approaching it, work has advanced on a number of Pathfinder projects, and I want to express my thanks to our colleagues in Dublin City and Kildare Fire Services and the housing agency for their work in bringing through those Pathfinder projects. And it's intended that this work, which will be completed really in the next few weeks, I think there's 4 Pathfinders, and you know, I think we're more or less at the stage where the 4 are at the point of adjudication now by the housing agency in terms of the proposals put forward. But there's been a lot of work done with the fire services in those applications to get them to this point. But it is intended that this work, which will be completed very shortly, will then guide the rollout of the scheme and the assessments to be undertaken by the relevant fire services. And very importantly, there's a workshop on this interim scheme for Chief Fire Officers and Director of Services with responsibility for building control to take place on the 22nd of October. in the Bridge House Hotel in Tullamore. And I really want to take this opportunity to encourage attendance at this event from the Chief Eye Officer and Directors, because this is a very sizable body of work which we must approach with a shared understanding and an appropriate consistency. It is intended thereafter to have engagement with the wider interests in this scheme, probably many of yourselves, so that there is maximum clarity in relation to what's allowable or not, and the approach to be taken, including in the context of the Building Control Act and regulations, and thus ensuring that we have a very streamlined process for the applications in respect of works that will be eligible for funding. And I understand that arrangements will be made in that regard in due course. I also want to acknowledge the support of the Department and the process to date, including the approval of additional fire service staff in the local authorities that are anticipated to be most effective. So that's going to be a big programme of work, not alone in the interim scheme, but then as the formal statutory scheme is brought into being. The building control reform agenda appears to be in almost continuous activation, and the primary focus has been on ensuring strong and effective regulation in the building environment and the construction industry, but also with a focus on inspection and training to improve compliance with the building regulations. And you'll be all aware of the introduction of the building control regulations in 2014, the creation of the National Building Control Management Project, the establishment of the National Building Control and Market Surveillance Office, and the regulation of providers of building works and miscellaneous provisions Act 2022. To further support building control, work is progressing on the consideration of a building standards regulator. And through the Housing, Building and Land Use Committee, the CCMA has welcomed the discussion around establishing an overall regulatory body to oversee building control and market surveillance. However, there's further clarity required on a number of aspects, including how this entity will operate, how the local government sector will be resourced to support this new body, and also to ensure that there's no overlap of functions. We all want to ensure that the best outcome is achieved, and it is clear from the sector that additional resources are required to achieve the objectives that have been set for such a proposed change. The role of market surveillance in particular is one where the sector is in strong agreement that this should be monitored and regulated centrally to ensure the development of appropriate expertise and to achieve consistency in practices and enforcement. As you're aware, the Building Control Acts, under the Building Control Act's primary responsibility for the design and construction of works in compliance with the requirements of the building regs rests with the owners, designers and builders of buildings, and the 31 building control authorities then have extensive powers of inspection and enforcement under the Acts. Under SI 108/2024, the Building Regulations Part B amendment regulations, the Minister amended the building regulations in relation to B1 to B5, adding B12 to the requirements of Part B, as well as amending Articles 5 and 13. B12 aims to ensure that adequate information is provided upon completion to ensure that the building can be effectively managed, having regard to its design. And the materials and techniques used to construct buildings have evolved beyond those envisaged under earlier versions of the technical guidance document. We are building more innovative structures, larger buildings, more complex arrangements and systems for lighting, heating, ventilation, access, and so forth. So the new technical guidance document has been produced to meet the fire safety design challenges of these new buildings. And in developing this TGD, relevant standards, tests and engineering approaches were considered, and a review of other jurisdictions' fire safety requirements was undertaken to ensure that best practice is being followed. It should be noted, and I assume understood, that in accordance, building in accordance with the technical guidance documents demonstrates prima facie compliance with the second schedule of the building regulations. And all these technical guidance documents are available for free on the Department's website and are a very valuable resource for owners, designers and builders to ensure compliance is achieved when carrying out work within the scope of the building regulations. And that, of course, includes new buildings, extensions, material alterations, material change of use, and the renewal repair of existing buildings. And we're all aware that there's an awful lot more work taking place on some of those areas over the past number of years as we bring old buildings back into use and so forth. So again, I want to thank you for your attendance and ongoing work, and I hope that today is a very informative and worthwhile engagement as part of our combined efforts to ensure that our residents and communities